The world held its breath. The world held its breath. The world held its breath. It was a cold night on October 31st, 2025. Tensions between the North Atlantic Federation and the Pan-Asian Coalition had reached a boiling point. A border skirmish had escalated. Missiles were now active in their silos. Fleets were sailing toward contested waters. The global stock markets had already collapsed, anticipating the worst. Millions of lives hung in the balance, teetering on the edge of a conflict that no one could truly win. The world was closer to a major war than at any point since the last century. Every news channel, every social media feed, was filled with fear and speculation. The time for public posturing was over. Deep beneath the city of Geneva, a secret meeting was underway. The room had no windows. It was a sterile, soundproof box designed for moments just like this. The air was thick and heavy, smelling of stale coffee and fear. A single, large mahogany table dominated the space. On it were scattered documents, half-empty glasses of water, and secure communication devices that remained ominously silent. The only light came from a stark, modern fixture overhead, casting long, distorted shadows on the walls. This was the last chance for diplomacy, a final, desperate attempt to pull the world back from the brink of total annihilation. The silence in the room was a weapon in itself. It was broken only by the quiet hum of the air filtration system and the occasional rustle of paper. On one side of the table sat General Secretary Chen, his face a mask of cold indifference. His advisors were rigid, their expressions unreadable. They represented the coalition, a power bloc convinced of its own righteousness and military might. On the other side, the Federation's representatives shifted nervously. They knew the stakes. They knew that any misstep, any poorly chosen word, could trigger a chain reaction with catastrophic consequences for all of humanity. The atmosphere was not just tense, it was suffocating. Every glance was a calculation. Every moment of silence was a strategic move. The delegates were not just men and women in a room, they were the embodiment of their nation's fears, ambitions, and pride. They were playing a game of geopolitical chess, where the pawns were cities, and the prize was global stability, or perhaps, global dominance. The fate of the world was being decided in this hidden chamber, far from the eyes of the public who would pay the ultimate price for their failure. The pressure was immense, a physical weight that seemed to press down on everyone present. Into this crucible of tension walked Elias Vance. He was the United Federation's lead diplomat. He was not a general or a politician. He was a negotiator, and he was the best. Vance had a reputation for staying calm under fire. He had brokered peace deals in war-torn regions and stared down dictators. He understood the language of power, the subtle art of compromise, and the dark psychology of conflict. But this was different. This was not a regional dispute. This was the precipice of a global catastrophe. The weight of the world was squarely on his shoulders, a burden he felt with every beat of his heart. Vance looked tired. His eyes were shadowed from sleepless nights spent studying intelligence briefings and psychological profiles. His suit, normally impeccable, was slightly wrinkled. He carried the hopes of billions, a responsibility that would crush a lesser man. He knew that his opponents, General Secretary Chen and his team, were testing him. They saw him as the final obstacle to their ambitions. Vance had to navigate their threats and their deceptions. He had to find a path to peace where none seemed to exist. He was outnumbered and isolated, the clock, his greatest enemy. He began the session with a calm, measured tone. He spoke of shared histories and the devastating mutual cost of war. He tried to build a bridge of reason across a chasm of hostility, but his words were met with stony silence from the other side of the table. General Secretary Chen leaned forward, his voice a low growl. He issued a stark ultimatum. The Federation was to withdraw all its forces from the disputed zone within 12 hours. No discussion, no compromise. It was a demand for unconditional surrender, disguised as a peace offering. The threat was clear: comply or face the consequences. The pressure in the room ratcheted up. Vance felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. This was not a negotiation, it was a power play. Chen was trying to force his hand, to make him crack under the immense weight of the ultimatum. Vance's own delegation looked at him, their faces pale with anxiety. They were looking for a sign of hope, a signal that he had a plan. But Vance kept his expression neutral. He could not show weakness. He could not show fear. He had to be a fortress of calm in a storm of threats, knowing that one wrong move meant the end of everything. The 12-hour deadline began its relentless countdown. The digital clock on the wall was a constant, mocking reminder of their approaching doom. Each tick felt like a hammer blow against the fragile chance for peace. Vance tried to counter Chen's ultimatum with a compromise. He proposed a phased, mutual withdrawal, a joint peacekeeping force, a new round of talks monitored by a neutral third party. These were reasonable, standard diplomatic solutions, but Chen dismissed them with a wave of his hand. He was not interested in reason. He was interested in victory. The coalition saw a moment of weakness and was determined to exploit it. Then came the first twist. One of Vance's own advisors, a junior diplomat named Sinclair, secretly passed him a note. The message was chilling. Intelligence had just confirmed that a faction within the Federation's own military was pushing for a preemptive strike. They believed diplomacy had failed. They were arguing that a surprise attack was the only way to gain an advantage. Vance now faced a two-front war. He was fighting the enemy across the table and the hawks within his own government. The betrayal cut deep, adding another layer of complexity to an already impossible situation. As the hours bled away, the tension became a living entity in the room. The air grew stale, nerves frayed, voices, once calm and measured, became sharp and laced with accusation. Suddenly Chen made a surprise offer, a stunning reversal. He suggested a private meeting, just him and Vance. No advisors, no aides. He claimed it was the only way to speak freely, to break the deadlock. The offer was a trap. Vance knew it. It was a tactic to isolate him, to apply personal pressure, or perhaps something more sinister. But it was also the only unexpected move of the night. It was a risk, but what choice did he have? The clock showed less than 2 hours remaining. The world outside was bracing for impact. Vance agreed to the private meeting. As his team protested, he knew this was the endgame. The negotiation had moved beyond formal proposals and into a raw, personal confrontation. The fate of the world would now be decided not by committees or governments, but by two men in a small, isolated room. The threats were no longer just about missiles and armies. They were personal, whispered in the suffocating quiet between two adversaries, with the survival of civilization as the ultimate stake. The private room was even smaller, more claustrophobic, just a small table and 2 chairs. Chen dropped all pretense of diplomacy. His voice was cold, precise. He revealed his final card. The coalition had developed a new type of cyberweapon, capable of disabling the Federation's entire command and control network in an instant. They could paralyze their military without firing a single shot. He presented irrefutable proof on a small data chip. It was a checkmate move, a threat of a swift, surgical, and devastatingly effective first strike. The ultimatum was no longer a request. It was a declaration of imminent victory. Vance's heart pounded in his chest, but his face remained a calm mask. He listened, his mind racing faster than ever before. He was cornered. The military option was gone. The cyber threat was real. Surrender seemed like the only choice to avoid a bloodbath. He thought of the cities, the families, the world that had placed its trust in him. Failure meant subjugation, but defiance meant annihilation. He looked at Chen, a man blinded by ambition, willing to risk everything for dominance. Vance knew that a world under Chen's control would be one of fear and oppression. He had one last card to play. It was a desperate, wild gamble. It was not a military threat or a diplomatic proposal. It was a piece of intelligence he had been holding, something personal about Chen himself. A secret so damaging it could shatter Chen's authority and topple his regime from within. It was a dirty move, a violation of the unwritten rules of diplomacy, but the rules no longer applied. Vance leaned forward, his voice barely a whisper, and laid his final gambit on the table. He was no longer negotiating for peace between nations. He was fighting for his life and the life of the world. The clock on the main room wall ticked past 0. The deadline had passed. Outside, the world waited in terrified silence. Did he succeed? Did the last-minute high-risk maneuver work, or did it backfire, pushing an enraged Chen to unleash his cyber weapon and plunge the world into darkness? In the soundproof chamber, 2 men stared at each other, the echoes of their final words hanging in the air. The outcome remained shrouded in uncertainty. The world held its breath, caught in the terrifying limbo between a fragile peace and the final war. The answer would only come with the dawn.